Hi, I'm Cathy Erickson, your RSCK EdTV host. And today we're in the lovely library of the Homewood Suites at the waterfront. And we're here to visit with Cindy Carnahan and Amelia Sumerell. Thanks for being here. We appreciate you both being so gracious to share your time with us and share some of your knowledge about the industry with our members. And if you're ready, we'll get started.
Go.
Okay.
Let's do this.
The first question is, it's a favorite, I just had this last week. How do you handle being asked to reduce your brokerage fee? Cindy?
Well, I think first of all, most people don't know what we do. So it's very important that you go into your meeting armed with what it is you're going to do for the seller. They have no idea what this job entails. They think it's an event and it's a process. So what they think is you're going to go find a buyer, you're going to write a contract, and then you're going to meet at the closing table and pick up a check. Well, that is so far.
I wish.
So far from what we're doing, but they don't know it. So go in armed with what you're going to do. They're not going to ask you to cut your commission the first 3 minutes you're in the room. They're going to ask you to do it after you have given your spiel as to what you do for your commission. Make it hard for them to ask you to cut the commission. Once we tell them what we're going to do, they're kind of blown away. It'd be kind of embarrassing, honestly.
It is. It's tough.
To ask us to cut our commission, because we're not going to talk to them about just our marketing strategies. That's the tip of the iceberg. I wish all we had to do was find a buyer. That's not what we're doing. So just make sure you're armed with not only your marketing, but all the things you will do for them all the way to the closing table. And I think you'll hear it far less, don't you?
I agree. And I think you also can say, I'm not a discount broker. There are some out there. But you're going to get full service. You know, again, tell them what you are going to do. And ask if there is someone out there that is willing to do it, do you want to go to the person that gives you the discount or the person that's been doing it for 30 years and who does it well? Do you want to go to the doctor for a heart transplant from the doctor who does it for half price? Or do you want to go to the doctor who's done it forever and does it well and is it tried and true?
Right.
That's a little more life and death, a little more dramatic, but you know, there's plenty of people.
It makes the point.
It makes the point of this is the biggest financial investment of their life, very likely. So why entrust it to someone who's not tried and true? Now, if you're not Cindy and you're out there and you are not tried and true, I think the better thing to say is, you know, you will get the service from me that you may not get from someone else, because not everybody gets to go in with 30 years of experience and $19 million worth of sales. So I think you can say, here's what I do. You'll have my full attention. I'll handle this professionally. And you know, there are people that will do it at a discount, but you get what you pay for.
This is actually a two-part question. So does your answer change at all if you have both sides of the transaction, or if you're selling a property and helping them buy their next one?
For me, it's two separate jobs. It'd be sort of like asking your OBGYN, if I have 4 babies, will you charge me less for the other 3 that we're going to do together?
Yeah.
I mean, it seems kind of absurd to me because it's 2 separate jobs. I really don't have that many people ask that, do you?
I have more people ask when you have both sides. I do have that more often than going in and trying to do less. But I think you also say, you know, do you want a realtor who's willing to do it for less? If they would sell out themselves, would they sell you out too? You know, if they're going to take a lot less and they're willing to do that. The answer could be a simple, no, I cannot do that. Silence. Next person that talks loses. So just say no. And then you know, see what they say.
They won't say it more than once.
No, they won't. They'll get it.
They'll get it the first time. And will they possibly find a discount broker? They possibly will. but they probably would have anyway.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So, it's not, I don't see it as a big problem.
The next question is, please share with us what you say to a seller who says, I want to find a house before I put mine on the market.
I have that a lot. First question would be, can you buy without selling? Is if you want to do that, then a lot of people do want to do that. They want to find something they really love, buy it, and then they want to get their house ready, put it on the market. That's great. Excuse me. When you run into a situation with a buyer or a seller buyer who says, I want to find something before I put my house on the market and I have to sell to buy, you got a lot of issues there. Number one, you've got what's going to be on the market today when you go look is not going to be on the market when your house is sold. Very unlikely that's going to happen. Also, you have a situation where you get excited about something, you get disappointed time after time after time. You also have a situation where do you really want to write a contingency? And I'm finding that writing a contingency, if I take Cindy a contingency offer, you know what she's going to make me do? I'm going to have to get right next to full price or better to have her get her seller to take a contingency. But if I go to Cindy with contingent upon the successful closing of a house that's under contract, that's a pretty much a sure thing. And Cindy's going to treat me a little differently in that I got a sure thing, it's her listing, and we may put this together, so I can probably get a little better price on the house. So I think there's a lot of, I think the disappointment, the what's out here now is not what's out there, going to be out there then. You still have people that say, I want to see if there's anything that I like before I put my house on the market. Sometimes, you know what, suck it up, you got to do it. You got to take them out and show them a few things and waste a little time, but you know, it's the nature of the beast. Sometimes you got to do it. But really think about it from their perspective. Don't want to be a contingency, don't want to fall in love with something they can't have, and don't want to have their house, have a house sell out from under them if it's something that they loved before. I've had this happen many times.
The disappointment is the disappointment can rub off on you. I think you need to remember that when people are disappointed, that disappointment can come right back as a badge on your shoulder because they think it happened because of you. Even if it didn't, even if you had nothing to do with the situation. When people feel like they've lost, they look to whoever the leader is, and that's going to be their realtor.
And they don't want to blame themselves.
No.
Don't interrupt you, but
Gosh,
they
no.
don't want to say, oh gosh, I shouldn't have ever looked. It's going to be Cindy's fault because she showed that to me. You know.
And it's sold. And so you have to, and in this market, it likely will be sold. So I think it's easier today for sellers to put their homes on the market, and after they have purchased one, if they have a home that's saleable, it likely will be sold and they won't own them for very long. A lot of it just depends on the seller and their economic situation, whether they can afford to move before they sell.
How do you address sellers wanting to price their homes at a certain amount and then come down later if they don't see any offers?
Well, it only takes about 4 days, maybe 3, for everybody that is poised and ready to buy a home to know it's on the market. So you've got about 3 days of a period where everyone's excited about this new listing. You can waste those 3 days if you want to. You can put it on the market at a price that's too high and run all the poised and ready buyers through. And now you're looking for someone who's entering the marketplace because you've already, those buyers are gone. They do not come back. They do not come back.
No.
So once you have run the poised and ready buyers off the property, then you are really in a brand new ball game. So what most sellers think is it takes a couple of months, at least 45 days at a certain price, before they should consider a price reduction. 3 days. In 3 days, everybody knows all the realtors know, everybody in the world knows about your home. My sense is if you overprice it and you let that first blush period go, or worse yet, put it on the market for sale by owner and run all the poised and ready buyers through, and then you're looking at finding someone brand new, because they're not coming back.
That's right. And I think those are golden days. And I've always said, depending on the price point, of course, but either your house is going to sell in 2 weeks or it's going to be a year and a half. On the upper end, it's going to be that. So you can pick what do you want to do. And the problem I have with sellers, and I don't know where they get this, I'm sure you have this too, I can be patient. Well, do you think the longer it stays on the market, the price is going up, so you can be patient until people want to pay your price? It's not going to work. And I think I'd rather tell them, be tight, because in order to negotiate an offer, we have to get one. And in order to get one, we have to price it so that people will come see it. Then you have the possibility, and this is a slight possibility, of getting more than one offer, where you can get your price. And in some markets now, here in some price points, we have that where you can have multiple offers on a house. Unusual, but it does happen. So be competitive and get more than one offer, as opposed to being pie in the sky and then 2 months down the road you've gotten it lowered, and again, just like Cindy said, you got to wait for a new buyer to enter the market or somebody in Wichita to decide they're going to move. And those buyers are so few and far between, especially the out-of-towners who come in.
The other thing that you can do is you can talk a little more pragmatically about the fact that the house is not getting more valuable every time you make a payment, every time you pay taxes or get the yard cut, or whatever it is you have to pay on that property. It's not getting more valuable by that amount every month. So what you then have is a declining asset. You have an asset that isn't getting more valuable on a monthly basis, but you're paying for it monthly. So think about if you really want to sell, it's not, I would like to sell if my home can bring this amount of money. That's your first clue that you should run. I would like to sell if. If what? Well, if the stars line up and
Right.
all of those things. But it's really important, I think, for people to realize that at any given moment, your home is worth what it's worth, and it's not getting more valuable just because you're waiting and you're patient.
Right, and it's not worth what you think it is, it's worth what the buyers think it's worth. And a seller to say, well, I'm not gonna take a dime less than X, I wanna say, I hope you don't have to, but I don't get to make that call, and neither do you. Now, looking at the flip side of this, and this is real world that we deal with all the time. You have this darling house, clean as a whistle, everything's updated, it's in the right neighborhood, and they want to price it above the market. You know, there are times where you look out there and you think, you know what, I'm not so perfect that I might not be 20,000 off on this. And we can try just because the house is so good. Now, that doesn't happen all the time, but I've done that. I've overpriced it accidentally, and then later I have to, we have to reduce it or whatever. But sometimes a house can bring something, but you've got to look at the numbers. And if you give them a market study with numbers, you have to say to the buyer, here are the numbers. The numbers say your house is worth $250,000. You want to price it at $275,000. Can we get a buyer who is willing to pay $25,000 over market value? And can we get an appraiser to appraise it for that?
Oh,
So you've got two issues there, and you think maybe we can and maybe we can't. Getting the appraisers to appraise it, that is a crapshoot. I'm not sure where they're going with their comps or what they're doing, but you might miss it and you might hit it. You just don't know. But there are times where I think you have to look at the house and the location, and if the seller is realistic to understand the numbers aren't there, but we can give it a shot. If the house is filthy dirty, it hasn't been updated, that's when I think you definitely run like a deer, especially if they want to overprice it then. So I hate to talk out of both sides of my mouth, but there are times where the real world kicks in and you're thinking, you know what, maybe somebody would pay this and maybe we could get it through.
Well, and think about the property itself and who the buyer is going to be.
Is that a big range?
Is it gonna be a cash buyer?
Right.
If it's gonna be a cash buyer, then, and if it's a really fabulous home in a fabulous neighborhood, hardly anything has come on the market for the last 18 months in that neighborhood, and the person that buys it will likely have cash, well, then wealthy people really don't care about money that much, truthfully. They really care about getting what they want, when they want it. And they don't stand in line. They pretty much get what they get, and they want what they want. And money is a byproduct of all that. So you have to kind of look at the house itself and think, well, I might get a cash buyer. There hadn't been anything on the market in here.
Right, especially the patio home, the upper end patio home, where you have a buyer who it has the money, they're scaling down, but they don't want to really scale down. They say they want to, but that's not what they mean, and they could go into something like that. I think that when it becomes an issue of I want what I want and I'm not going to pay for it, if it's, especially in the upper end, that's when I think nobody's going to pay $1 million and settle. They don't have to do that.
Right.
They can, if you can spend $1 million, you can spend 1.5. You can spend 1.5, you can spend 2.2. And I'm not going to settle for somebody else's mistake. I don't, I'd rather build it myself, or I'll stay where I am. They're, obviously, Cindy says they're not interested in money. They're interested in getting what they want. They're still interested in the value, but the value has to meet what they want. And I find a lot of times, a buyer gives me a list of 10 things they want in a house. And it's, these 10 things, I go out, I find a house that has 8 of the 10. And I'm like, sale, we're good. And they're like, it doesn't do it for me. And then they say, but I want to see this house over here that has 2 of the 10 things they told me they wanted. They fall in love in tears as they walk through the front door and they buy it. So it's buyers or liars. So sometimes you even have this upper end buyer who says, I want this, but they see something that just does it for them that's not what they wanted. They'll buy it, and it won't make any difference what the price is. They say they want it, they're going to do it.
Yeah, there's lots of different motivations in the marketplace. People that think they're going to build a house today and get busy and show them land and lots, and they get their plans, they get the blueprints, they get everything done, and they let it out for bid, and they find out that they better get into the resale market. So I always say people that own a lot today are probably the best buyers for resale tomorrow.
That's probably true.
Because they don't have any idea. They have no idea. They know they can afford to buy the lot, pay cash for it, and they know that they can afford to get the blueprints done and have a great architect. They have no idea what all those bells and whistles are going to cost. So it's interesting. People are fascinated.
Fascinating.
Well, Amelia, you alluded to this earlier. Our next question is, what advice would you share on how to handle having multiple sellers for a property that have different motivations?
Yeah, I'm finding, and I don't know why, I draw them. I don't know if you draw them, but I seem to just be a magnet for the nasty divorces. And I get the people who it's a divorce and the husband wants to sell and the wife's still holding on to the marriage, or vice versa, and the husband wants it done, or the wife wants, she wants the money out of the house. I run into that a lot. The other point of that was maybe houses that are in an estate, but usually you have one person in an estate that is an executor and that they're calling the shots. I have not had a big problem with estate houses with multiple motivation. I have the divorce problem, and I think the divorce is where you have to be really careful on this, because you got to be neutral enough that they don't view you in the other person's camp. And that's very difficult, because usually you can look at this and see the sides, and you have to be, neutral and try to not judge anybody. But you also have, somebody who you get an offer, and you have to wait for the court to decide, because he wants to take this and she wants to wait, and you have to get a court to decide, and you can't wait 5 days. That buyer won't sit there.
Most people don't realize that if they can't decide amongst themselves, the court will decide for you. And that has been a really good tool for me to say to both sides of that divorce situation, if you can't agree on this contract, then it will be taken to court and the judge will prevail. And they don't think that's true. That's surely not. Surely I can't be taken out of the decision-making process. Well, yes, you can. And the judge can make that decision. The estate, one of the things I'm seeing in both the estate and the divorce is communication. Make sure you're communicating the same thing with both parties or all parties. I send out the same email. I make sure I have everybody's email address that's in this process.
Right.
And they get the same thing at the same exact time. And I really, really watch that email so that I'm communicating exactly what I mean to every single party. You can pretty much tell if you get to meet with all of the heirs who's going to be the Debbie Downer, who's going to be the one that won't listen to anything anybody has to say. And it's at that point, at that very first meeting, can we all agree that I know more about selling real estate than anyone else in the room? Can we all agree on that? If we can all agree on that, we might have an opportunity here for me to be the leader and you to give me the input I need and get the most money. But I have to be the leader. I have to be the motivator. I have to be the marketer. So please, give me whatever input you have and whatever input I need, but at the end of the day, let's all agree I know more about this than anyone else. So you've got to get that across, I think, because if you don't, you're going to have that one person that knows more about residential real estate than anybody in the world, and you just have to get that. I think you have to get that commitment.
And the delivery of that has to be so that people can get it and they're not offended by it.
No, I don't.
Because there's a very fine line between confidence and arrogance.
That's right.
And you have to present yourself to these people as you're going to work with them. You're going to try to listen to their input, just as Cindy said. But I think you also in that have to say, and if you don't agree, then it has to go to the courts, especially in a divorce situation. And you can each pay $400 an hour for you to go to court and decide this, and $10,000 later, after you've spent that, they're gonna be agreeing with me, because who the judge is gonna decide with is not one of you but me, because I'm the expert in the field. And so it's not gonna be he said, she said. In a group of heirs, you have a better shot of, okay, especially because chances are the heirs, somebody doesn't like somebody else in the room anyway.
They don't.
I mean, in the divorce, somebody didn't like somebody else in the room, but in the heirs, you never trusted your brother-in-law. When it comes down to money, people act differently.
And a lot of it's body language and delivery too. If I was sitting there like this, delivering that information, I want them to know and do. If I'm forward, but if you have to really be open when you're seated with people, so that you're not like this, you're open, you're ready to receive whatever it is that they have to say. And then if you're trying to deliver something that's heartfelt, move forward in your chair. Give them a little idea that you're sincere, that you're not trying to be haughty or in control. You're trying to be helpful. You're trying to help. Somehow.
Great.
Somehow.
Sometimes as agents, we hear, my neighbor's agent did this and this and this. When there are things that you don't do, how do you address those?
I first ask, what are they? I mean, let's be open-minded. Maybe it's something that they do that's good. Maybe it's something that we could try. Because I'm always looking for the next best way to market something. So I think you have to listen to that instead of poo-pooing and saying, well, they're an idiot, or they were, I mean, that's what you want to say, kind of. But the reality is maybe they have something that could work for me too. But then I want to say, okay, did the house sell? Was it priced differently? There's a lot of factors. Even if you have a realtor who tried I don't know what they did, dress up in a chicken suit and big pants and pants in the yard. I can do that if I need to. But if it's, I'd like to hear what it was, because it might work. And if it is not something I would do, like let's say they wanted a broker's open, because they had a broker's open out there. I can sell against a broker's open as best as anybody. Sometimes you need to do one, yeah, you might have that house that needs it. But if it's something that you don't do, I think you tell them all the things you are doing. And I've sold more houses in this neighborhood, or my company has sold more houses in this neighborhood. We don't have to do the gimmicks. We don't have to do things like that, because I do these 10 things, not necessarily that thing, and it's tried and true and it works. And if it's not you as the agent that can say, I do this and I'm the best seller in this neighborhood, you can say my company. And it's probably pretty fair depending on what company you're with. So I think see if it's something that you would want to do. And if it's something ridiculous, don't slam it. You can't do that. You can't say, are you freaking kidding me? She really did that? I mean, just say, yeah, I guess that would work with certain people, and maybe it worked with them, but I think there's a better approach to doing this, and this is what I would like to do.
Well, and these are the things I'd like to try first. But
then Cindy will get the chicken soup.
I'll get the chicken soup.
Yeah.
Pots and pans. No, it's very interesting, because people from different areas of the country, they do different things. And they think it is cast in stone and it's the best way to do it. And all you can say is, well, let's try the things that I do. And if we're not successful, then let's maybe implement that. But stay open. You can't poo-poo any ideas that come out of a seller's mouth, or you will be dismissed.
One of the things you said earlier talked about setting the stage when you first meet with someone, when you first meet with sellers. What do you do to set and manage the expectations of your buyers and sellers?
Well, first of all, during the presentation, they're going to know what you say you're going to do. There's only a couple of things you got to do to be successful, I think. You have to show up on time. You have to say please and thank you. You have to do what you said you were going to do. It's not rocket science. So when you state you're going to do something, you have to do it. You can't forget to do it. You must do it. So I think I set the stage just simply by saying, let's look at the house. Let's look at your home. Tell me what you think is the most important thing about living here. How can I be helpful? I'm here to be helpful. I'm here to be your guide. I'm here to help you accomplish your goals. So I set the stage that I'm there to help. Beyond that, just go to work all day, every day. Try to help them manage their expectations. And they may have expectations that they think it's going to happen overnight because they love their home. But once you get into the actual figures and the days on the market, they start to see the actual numbers. They realize, they say, oh, God, the average days on the market's 180 days. Yes, that's the average. So we have to be careful to price properly, and there's a direct correlation between being priced properly and those days on the market. And you can go right down the list and say, now see, this one sold almost exactly where it was priced, and it was on the market for 24 days. Oh, this one was on the market for 360 days, and you can see they had 3 price reductions. So you have to start giving them that kind of information so that they see it in black and white.
I also find that when I present a house, a neighbor's house that's sold, they had the wrong information, because their neighbor said, oh, we sold ours for $350,000 when they really sold it for $338,000. So that happens. Or when a buyer buys a house, they'll say, oh, I paid $338,000 and they really paid $350,000. I mean, it happens a lot. So the information you're giving them a lot of times is different from what they thought they were going to see. I also have been very careful to tell sellers about expecting a low offer. Even sometimes in the first few weeks when you get an offer, it could be a low offer. So I don't want anybody to think, okay, we're going to get a full price offer. So if we get an offer that's, and what a seller considers low and what a buyer considers low are two different things. I mean, if we price a house at $100,000, to a seller a low ball is $93,000. To a buyer a low ball is $68,000. So it depends on whether you're pitching or catching. So I would say, let them know that what you're going to do. I don't think you need to say what you're not going to do. I think you need to keep it positive. But I think you also need to say, here's what I'm going to do. Here's how I'm going to manage it. Kind of take the bull by the horns. Here's the way. Here's what's going to happen. Here's how it's going to go. One of the things I have learned to do in my listing appointment, this is very minutia, but it's something I deal with every day. Tell them about Zillow before you go in. Tell them that Zillow is not going to have the right information. That your house on Zillow estimate is going to be off. Zestimate is going to be way off. And if they say, well, Zestimate says this house is only worth $150,000, then say, well, go price your house in Omaha that you're moving from. What does it say it's worth? Because they're not looking at the same thing. Right. Zestimate and other houses, when you look at a market study and you say, well, your neighbor's house sold for this, then you say, have you been in their house? They'll say, oh yeah, and mine is much nicer than that. But when you see Zestimate or when you see numbers, appraisal numbers, they did not factor in that the house smelled like cat urine, because on the MLS you can't smell it. So I was in that house. Cindy was in that house. I know, even though that house was updated, it stunk. So you have to kind of manage them in the comps to say, this is why we're looking at this house. This is why we're looking at this house. I've been in all these houses. Your house stacks up much better than some of these, but this other one has a 4-car garage and you only have a 2. That's worth something to the average buyer. You have to kind of say, here's why somebody would like this house more. And when you get into, when they say, I think my house is worth $250 and my comps say $225, then I sometimes go back and say, okay, let's look at the houses that sold for $250 that were exactly where you think your house would be. Well, you have 2,400 square feet. That one had 2,900 square feet and a 3-car garage and an extra bathroom in the basement. Therefore, if they got this price, you're probably going to get less of a price than that one.
You know, the other thing is, they don't realize that Zillow has no data. They are a second-tier provider of data. So they don't have the data. And so therefore they can't be accurate. So we don't give them our comparable data in Wichita. They don't know what our houses have sold for. MLS rules and regs say that we may not give our data to second-tier providers. They don't know that. They have no idea that Zillow and Trulia are second-tier providers, and it is important that you let them know that, because they believe they know what their home's worth before you walk in the door.
Right.
So you have, sometimes you come in with a jaded view, reality check as to what it's really going to be worth, and they may be ready to receive that information and they may not.
Well, thank you so much. I know I learned a lot. And I'm sure the membership will too, but thank you so much for sharing. We appreciate that.
Sure, absolutely.
And for the RSCK EdTV, that's all we have for today.
Thanks.